Ole Miss versus Georgia, Tennessee versus Alabama, LSU versus Vanderbilt, Texas Tech versus Arizona State, and USC versus Notre Dame. We've got you covered with free plays and opinions on all of this week's big college football games. Welcome to the Blitz. If you're watching us live here on the Wage Talk YouTube channel, feel free to ask us about any other game as well. All you got to do is comment down below. We only ask that you smash that like button and click subscribe. Joining me, Ralph Michaels, and look who's back, Ross Benjamin. Ross, we missed you. The people missed you. They were asking. Great to have you back on the show. So I'm going to start with you with all that. Ole Miss and Georgia, mentioned it at the top of the show. We have an unbeaten team, Ole Miss, getting more than a touchdown on the road. Georgia hasn't been the same as they've been in past years. They kind of, and I say this as someone who had Auburn last week. I thought Georgia cheated to beat Auburn last week. I thought they had some help from the referees. But what do you think here? Georgia's usually a force at home. Is this line about right? Too low? Too high? What do you think?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words, Brian. I missed you guys, and I missed the viewers out there as well, and I appreciate all your well wishes that you sent to customer service. In terms of this matchup, you're looking at a team in Georgia, with a one-loss team, as better than or around or better than a touchdown favorite against Ole Miss. I'm not as much as Georgia. Brian, you make a great point. Is not the Georgia we've seen in years past, nowhere near as dominant. I just don't trust Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss on the road in a game against a quality opponent. And the odds makers, if you look at this, you have a one-loss team, again, is a favorite of -7 or better against a ranked number 5 team in the country. That in itself speaks volumes to me. I'm not going to have a play on this game. I don't have a strong opinion here, but I would have a lean here, lay the points with Georgia over Ole Miss, who was extremely lucky to get by Washington State last week as a 32.5-point favorite. They won the game by 3.
Yeah, kind of. They were sleepwalking at Oxford. Ralph, Ross brings up a good point there. Ole Miss possibly I know we've on the past debated whether or not there's such a thing as a look-ahead factor, but Ole Miss was definitely playing with their food, it seemed like. At least if you live in Oxford or a fan of the Rebels, you hope they were playing with their food, because I don't know how else to explain that one last week. What do you think about this game here? It certainly is. Odds makers are certainly making a statement by having the Bulldogs this large of a favorite.
Well, let me ask you this. I don't know what the look-ahead line was, but after they beat LSU and had a 480 to 254-yard edge, I bet this would have been closer to a field goal than it was a touchdown. So let's remember, you want to talk, we'll give Marco a shout out. You want to talk about the classic sandwich game in the SEC this year. You're home against LSU. You go to Georgia before, and then you host Washington State in the middle. So I understand that loss, and I'm okay with, I call it a loss. I mean, it wasn't a loss. It was one of the biggest ATS losses. My power ratings still say Georgia. I still think the Georgia Bulldogs, have an offense this year that surprised me. In their last 3 games, they played Tulane, LSU, and Washington State. They had a season high against Tulane. They had a season high against LSU. They were number 2 against Washington State. But there's one reason. There's not many times that there's only one reason why I won't bet a game, but it's this. When Georgia is a favorite, with a total over 50, that means they're playing an offense that's semi-decent. They have failed to cover 11 straight the last 2 years, and going back 3 years, they're 2-16-1. And remember, only 2 scenarios. Georgia as a favorite with a total over 50. 0-11 ATS, 2-16-1 against the spread. That keeps me off Georgia, even though they were, my opinion, my lean going into this week.
You see the odds right there on your screen, guys. Look, anyone who knows me knows my natural default is towards the underdog more often than not. I have got the squarest take on this game and another one of the big SEC matchups that we will be touching on later. I think a Georgia-Alabama moneyline parlay might honestly be the way to go. Because let's not forget, Georgia's got revenge against Ole Miss. They lost the Rebels last year in Oxford. This game's in Athens. Georgia had won 30 straight at home before the loss to Alabama a couple weeks ago. I know it's really, really square sounding, taking parlaying two favorites of 7.5 or more together. I don't know. I don't think the home teams are losing in these big SEC matchups. Guys, keep those comments coming. I see there's some people here about commenting with some of the early games here on Saturday. We've got a question about Arizona and Houston, virtually a pick-em now. I'm a little surprised the way this line is moving. I kind of liked my initial thought, Ross, was towards Houston. Actually, this game, Arizona off a crushing loss last Saturday night at home to BYU. They were up 10 in the fourth quarter. They blow that lead. There was a fumble right before BYU scored the game-tying touchdown. We had some cowardice in the first overtime with field goals being kicked, and then BYU takes it in double OT. So this Houston team, I'm feeling good about that over 6.5 win bet for sure. I don't know. I thought they were the right side here, but the market says otherwise.
Me or Ralph?
Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I know you've been high. You were high on Houston, and now I know because you're holding that ticket of over 6.5. But you made some good points in terms of Houston and how improved they are. Arizona definitely coming off a tough loss at home to BYU. And how do they recover from that loss? That's yet to be seen. I know the betting patterns that I look at in terms of money and volume of tickets leads me to think that the sharps are on Arizona here. However, I'm not going to dabble in this game. This is one I think that I will defer to Ralph and you, Brian. I really think there's better value on the board elsewhere than to tangle with this tough matchup in what's virtually an even game.
One other thing I should add, Ralph, is early start time for Arizona. Obviously a noon Eastern kick from a team coming out west. I don't know if that matters to you in your handicap, how you look at this one.
It's so much different moving one time zone. I mean, Houston, Arizona is a short flight. It's not like, Oregon having to travel to Rutgers where we have a legitimate thing. So I am not too concerned about that. Last year in the Big 12, they started having some early games, so I think they're accustomed. My numbers clearly have Arizona. I make them a 3-point favorite. You look at the schedule. They played a tougher schedule, only 10 spots better, 87 to 97. So neither team has played a very difficult schedule. But when you look at yards per game diff and points per game diff, Arizona 20 and 28 respectively, Houston 48 and 45. Also pace. Is Houston accustomed to playing fast teams? Not really. Their defense was only on the field 51 plays against Oklahoma State. They were on the field 90 plays against Texas Tech the week prior. What happened? They gave up 552 yards in that. Arizona currently number 24, running 71.5 plays per game. And then as far as explosive plays go, you have Arizona that's not also much better in sacks than Houston is, and in defensive explosive plays. Those are plays over 10 or 20 yards. Arizona number 13 and 18 on defense. So all of that says Arizona. I liked Arizona. They were in my mix to be a play, but the reason I did not back them is just this. This is only their second road game. Now, 50 played last year, but this year on the road, one game at Iowa State. They lose that game 39-14. Last year on the road, they were outgained by 110 yards per game, and the defense and the offense averaged 40 yards per game less on the road. The defense averaged 50 yards more, allowing 50 yards more on the road. So this being their second home game keeps me off it, but clearly a lean on Arizona.
Okay, so there you go. These guys agreeing with the market there, how it's moving towards Arizona. Arizona's taking money, actually, now several weeks in a row. If you go back to that loss they had against Iowa State a few weeks ago, the public was the sharp money was all over them, I should say. That line came way down. We have a similar line move here in Missouri, Auburn. This is very, very similar to the line move we just talked about with Arizona and Houston. Auburn, again, I mentioned it at the outset. I thought I thought they were playing 11-on-14 last week, Ross, against Georgia. I really did. I didn't think it was fair, but they get the law again. They're 0-3 in SEC play now. Is Auburn? They opened though, despite that 0-3 record in SEC play, they opened as the favorite against number 16 Missouri, who is of course off its first loss of the season. That being a game where they were off the bye at home against Alabama, heavily hyped game. I don't agree. I talked about this game on the midweek edition of the Power 5. I don't agree with this line move, believe it or not. I know there's an argument that Auburn could be ready to throw in the towel on Hugh Freeze. It's not going well down there, but this is Missouri's first true road game. So I don't know. I actually lean Auburn in this game, especially now as a dog.
Well, you got two very good defenses, but I'm going to explain to you why I disagree with you. I think Missouri is the play here. Auburn has lost 3 in a row, all against SEC opponents, as you alluded to. They scored 17 points or fewer in each of those 3 games. Matter of fact, during this 3-game losing streak, averaging just 12.3 points per game and 247 yards per game. That's their enigma, and I don't know if they're going to be playing a very good defensive team as well in Missouri, and I'll get to that in a second. But despite their good defensive numbers, they have been exposed on a couple occasions defensively. They allowed 483 yards to Baylor in their season opener and 414 yards to Texas A&M. Now, I know they held Georgia to 20, but I would argue the point that I think Missouri's offense is much better than Georgia's offense at this juncture. The Missouri Tigers also, like I said, very good defensively. 325 yards or fewer allowed in all 6 games this year, including last week in that 3-point home loss to Alabama. Their offense, on the other hand, the Tigers are averaging just a tad under 42 points per game, 511 yards per contest, and 6.7 yards per play. So, and I got a betting angle for you here, Ralph. It's a money line betting angle. Anytime you have a college football away team like Missouri with a win percentage of 833 or better, and they've won 16 or more of their last 22 games versus an opponent coming off 3 straight losses in which they scored 17 or fewer on each occasion, 79-9 straight up since 1983. That's 90%. And if those away teams won 16 or more of their last 22 games, like I alluded to, they improved to 52-3. And Missouri, by the way, 18-4 in their last 22. Missouri, minus 120 on the money line over Auburn. Awful cheap money line price considering the point spread is at 2. So I'm going to go with that. You could find that minus 120 at FanDuel right now.
Go, Ralph. That's quite the trend that Ross cited there. You have anything that you'd want to add in this game? We're going to be staying in the
Ross the pen. I will say this. Ross gave big numbers for Missouri and big numbers for Auburn. But just like last week was the biggest ever discrepancy I saw in week 6 as far as strength of schedule. Let's remember that Auburn's played the number 4 schedule. Missouri's played the number 103 schedule. That's embarrassing for an SEC team. So, yes, that's your job, is to quantify. Missouri's number 7 in yards per game diff. Auburn's number 71. But again, you got to look at the strength of schedule when you're looking at those numbers, especially this far. You want to talk about a coach that's saying, thank you, GM, for scheduling me the sister of the poor nobodies. Since 1990, guys, only 7 teams have started their first 6 games at home and played their first road game in week 7. Guess what? They're 0-7 against the spread. Losing by 15.8 points per game, failing to cover by 15.8 points per game. So take that what you with. It's a small sample size. You can't base anything on it, but it just shows you how few teams have done exactly what Missouri's doing. Play the first 6 games at home and now take your road trip. Now, Missouri, this is where I think we get some value. I like the under. You look at Missouri's offensive numbers. Yes, they are strong. They're number 7 in yards per game. They're number 10 in points per game. But their strength of schedule, number 103. And they're number 5 in plays per game, number 76. They will not run the same pace in Auburn on the road with crowd noise as they do at home. I think that's a definite angle, and I do like the under here.
All right, the under. There you go. So we've got some discrepancy on the side at least, but Ralph likes the under. Ralph, I'm going to come right back to you because there's some astounding trends with this LSU Vanderbilt game. I see somebody asking about this game. This is in our rundown, LSU and Vanderbilt. So let's go to it. Someone wants to know about it. Guys, this is the first time in 52 games that Vanderbilt is favored over SEC. That's pretty incredible. And it is the first time, Ross, I believe you went back to 1983 just a few moments ago with your trend. Well, I'm going to take you back to the 1940s before all of us were betting on games, okay? That was the last time anyone could find record of Vanderbilt being favored over LSU. That's pretty crazy. So, So there you go. There, LSU, Vandy in the favorite role. It's pretty crazy to see them in that role here against LSU. So, Ralph, what do you think here? It's certainly uncharted territory for the Commodores.
Yeah, I'm looking. I only go back to 1997. Brian, what year did you say they were favored?
The 1940s was the last time. Oh, I apologize. Not against LSU. Vanderbilt has not been favored against a ranked opponent since October 11th, 1947.
Ross, did you watch that game? Were you a Vanderbilt?
Oh, no.
Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I missed it because I had to go to church.
I got you. Okay. But, I'm looking back since 2004, since they beat SEC foes. The lowest spread was 10 points at home. But remember last year, this team, Vanderbilt, was only an 8.5-point underdog at LSU. So they started getting their respect last season, and now we have it. This is a game that I don't know. I like Vanderbilt. I love the story, but playing with this type of pressure as the season mounts, to me, you need to have some experience to do that. And LSU's defense, when you're holding teams to 3.2 yards per carry, that's exactly what you need to stop a Vanderbilt offense where your leading rusher is Diego Pavia. He leads with 352 yards on 60 attempts. So I think the Auburn run game is going to cause them problems. Last week against Alabama, he broke a couple big ones off, so they had 7.1 yards per carry. I don't think they do that against the LSU's defense. I lean the Tigers.
Okay, we had a comment here. Somebody, RJ Ross said, take Vandy in the first half because LSU starts slow, but they're really solid after halftime. Interesting point there because Vandy is off a bye here, which is always – so you think they're ready to go. Not that LSU was that tested against South Carolina last week, but still at home off the bye. Kind of an interesting angle, I guess, for Vandy.
Yeah, again, I've always professed if you think like an odds maker, more times than not, you're going to come out on the right side. Not always, but more times than not. And this is a textbook example of such. LSU has won the last 10 meetings between these schools on the gridiron. Vandy's last time they beat LSU way back in 1990. Last year they played in Baton Rouge, and Vandy gave them all they can handle in a 24-17 loss. LSU 5-1 to start the season. Their only loss 24-19 at Ole Miss. LSU winning with defense. They've allowed 10 points or fewer in 5 of their 6 games, all resulting in wins. However, if you look at their offense, Ralph and Brian, leaves a lot to be desired. With Grant Nussmeier at quarterback, the senior signal caller, a lot of people thought LSU would be a very explosive offensive team. That's not been the case. Now, the LSU defense, I don't think a lot of people predicted they would be this good, but they are. Now, LSU, their offense in 3 road games this year, 18 points per game and 305 yards per contest, and scoring 1 point per 25.3 yards gained. And Ralph, that's an atrocious number. Here's another thing to consider. Since 2023, all under current head coach Brian Kelly, the LSU Tigers are 1-7 straight up in ATS, as when their point spread is between +3 and -3. Conversely, The Vanderbilt Commodores have gone 7-0 straight up in ATS in their last 7 when their point spread, again, is between +3 and -3. And that includes 2-0 this year with a 31-7 win at South Carolina and a 44-20 blowout at Virginia Tech in that exact situation. They're coming off their first loss of the year, meaning Vanderbilt to Alabama. And Bryan brought it up. They're playing off a bye week. So not only coming off a loss, not only coming off a week of rest, but they're playing a team they're going to have big-time revenge on. And I don't know if any Vanderbilt team has been equipped to knock off LSU than this one right here. And again, you look at the point spread in this game, you would think that LSU on paper is a better team. And this kills me, Ralph, because I got a ticket on LSU to win the national championship at +1,400 and also to win the SEC. But it's a perfect example why I hate futures, because if you marry yourself to one team just because you made a futures bet and fail to realize the current situation, it's not a good thing to do. And I am going to disregard what I have and ignore what I just said. And I'm going to take Vanderbilt here. And I'm actually going to go on the money line here at -134 against LSU. And I don't have a problem with laying a 2.5, but it's just a personal preference for me. When I get a favorite of 2.5 or less that I like, if I can get a money line of -40, -140 or fewer, I will opt for the money line each and every time. So Vanderbilt -134 for me, Ralph, against LSU.
You know, Bryan, one of the viewers said what, first half or first quarter for Vanderbilt?
First half for Vanderbilt.
Okay, so I do want to mention this. The Gold Sheet logs are absolutely amazing with the first quarter, first half logs. And I'm going to give you guys a code. If you want to try this week's Gold Sheet, you can get it for $9. It's normally $19 for football, but use code GS10. That'll save you $10 off this week's Gold Sheet. $9 will get you a write-up in every college football game and every NFL game. But take a look at these logs. You'll see the first column to the left is full game. You'll see that LSU is 3-3 ATS. You'll see that Vanderbilt is 4-2 ATS. But look at that first quarter. First quarter this year, LSU is 1-5 against the spread, and Vanderbilt is 4-2. First half, LSU is 1-4-1. Vanderbilt is 4-2. So Vandy has gotten off to quick starts. LSU gotten off to very poor starts. So that's something to look. If you are an LSU fan, I don't want to tell you to not bet the game, but if you still like LSU and they get down early, the data tells us they will come back in the second half or the last 3 quarters of the game.
There you go, RJ. Some data to back up your line of thinking there. I also wanted to comment on what Ross was talking about, taking the money line over the points. But remember, guys, the new college football overtime rules, when they have to start going for 2 in double overtime. I know we're threading quite a small needle here, but hey, if the game that matters, you don't want to be laying a -2.5 ticket and this game goes in double overtime. Then you're just like, then you're screwed. So the money line does have its advantages. I would concur with Ross there. Let's hit some more comments here. Most needles are. Yes. Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Okay. Wonderful head of hair today you got going, by the way. All right, let's talk about Clemson and SMU.
Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Clemson and SMU is down to -4.5. I have no man's land. Too far. Does it? Well, look, it's hard for me to comment on this game because right before we went live, look, the news started to trickle out. Cade Klubnik, we do not know his status. I don't like betting on games where I don't know the status of the starting quarterback. Call me old-fashioned. It's tough to do. I'll say, and here's the other part of the equation. I don't like this SMU team. They covered for the first time, Ross, last week all year. They were one of the last teams to get Penn State, disaster. Penn State is the only team now left in the country that has not covered a single point spread this year. So I don't like the SMU side, and I don't want to bet Clemson, not knowing the status of Klubnik. Other than that, I'm sure it's a fine game to bet. So that's a stay away game for me. I don't know if either of you guys have anything to add about that ACC battle.
I liked Clemson. If Klubnik, I thought he was going to play. He was on my list, and he still is on my list if I found out he practiced. So that's all I'll share. I talk a lot about averages and what teams do because with strength of schedule, it doesn't really matter. But you look at teams. SMU is number 85 on offense compared to what their other opponents gave up, and they're 100 on defense. Clemson is 47 and 31. Those are massive edges. And while we can't get too excited because Clemson is off back-to-back huge wins, winning 79-20 combined, remember that is at North Carolina and at Boston College, two of the weakest teams in the ACC this year. But I still do like them. You look at SMU. They went on the road to TCU, got outgained by 133 yards. They won at Missouri State, but that was Missouri State's, welcome to the FBS type game. So not concerned about that. Like Clemson, but Brian, you said you don't like betting on teams that you don't know the quarterback. That's just being smart. There's nothing. I mean, that is none of us are ever going to bet a game where we know the status of a quarterback. Maybe if it's for the opposition and we don't care which quarterback plays, but you're certainly not going to back a team without knowing, especially with the difference between Klubnik and Vizina, I think is the guy behind him. So if Vizina goes, you've got no experience at all. So I like it if Klubnik is playing and healthy. So if he practices today and we get a report tonight that he was fine and he's good tomorrow morning, I still might be on Clemson.
Yeah, I'll say this. It could be like bottom of the market time on Clemson. Obviously, everyone knows, what a just disappointing start they got off to the season. But I think there's room to improve there for Clemson. I think, if you really wanted to fade this Clemson team, that time may have passed. Guys, we're going to talk about some of the biggest games here still to come. Tennessee, Alabama, Texas Tech, Arizona State, USC, Notre Dame. But we are going to talk now, take a little bit of time to tell you what we've got going on our respective pages over at wagertalk.com. I can let you guys know I have now won 8 of the last 9 days overall, a 67% all sports run. It does not get much easier than the play we had last night in Major League Baseball, the over 7 in Toronto, Seattle. We will put it up now. There. If you're watching this live, no, I do have a 4% best bet in MLB tonight that you're going to want to get only $9. And that recent run, 4-0 sweep in the NFL last week as well. I have a 4% best bet on my page, plus an additional play you can get for just $29. But of course, Ross, that weekend Warrior Pass, we've been talking about each week. It's such a way to go. So you can get all my Saturday college football, Sunday NFL, and I'm going to have a big one, I think, on Monday night. So you get all that for $49, WT.buzz/BP. Ross, what do you got going?
Yeah, that $49 weekend Warrior Pass is not only a good deal, it's an absolute steal. And if you think about this, folks, you're getting all my college football picks on Saturday, NFL Sunday and Monday. And don't forget, there's 2 Monday night games in the NFL. So why should you entertain buying that from me? Well, I'm glad you asked, folks, because I'll tell you why. I'm started the college football season 19-10, picking up right where I left off a season ago, where I finished number 1 in units earned and also number 1 in win percentage. Since the start of the 2023 season, I am number 1 in units earned in college football, and I'm on a current college football winning runs 79-45, which is 64%, and 145-95, 60%, and up 112 units in college football since September 9th of 2023. NFL 8-4 since week 3. College football and NFL combined 25-13, 66% since September 11th. Folks, doesn't get much better than that. And you can get everything I put out in those 2 sports, college football and the NFL, on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, including 5% best bets, $49. What are you waiting for? It's an absolute steal.
All right, there you go. It is. I would concur. Ralph, it's available for you as well. What do you got going on this weekend here at Wager Talk?
Hell, listen to these records. We sound like we know what we're talking about. Nice job, guys. I keep having to say that I'm number 2 in college football since the start of last year, because damn Ross Benjamin is ahead of me. So I'll keep trying to chase him. Overall run 43-25, 63%. College football, 31-15, 67%. College football sides, 4% and higher, 10-1, 91%. I will have an NFL 5% this week. My NFL 5%'s 7-1, 88%. I'm number one at Wager Talk the last calendar year in football 5%'s, going 18-5, 78%. And my NFL teasers rated 4% and higher, 17-3, 85%. Weekend Warrior gets you all of Saturday's college football, all of Sunday's NFL, including my $35 5% play. And if I have a Monday night play, you'll get it as well. Get Ross, Bryan, me, or any Wager Talk handicapper on the Weekend Warrior, just $49. And remember, this is the week to try out the Gold Sheet newsletter, a write-up on every game, logs and stat breakdowns on every game. Normally $19 a week. Save $10, pay only $9 with the code GS10, available now.
All right. Jay Buff, Jacob, Marion, we see all your comments in the chat. We will get to them, but we have to get to our run. Lots of comments today. Love to see that. Don't forget, by the way, while you're commenting, smash that like button. And don't forget to hit subscribe as well. We appreciate your support here on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. Let's get to one of the big ones, though, guys. Alabama hosting Tennessee. Alabama, what a schedule they have been facing, Ross. Every week it feels like they're dealing with a ranked team. I mentioned earlier in the show that I think Georgia's not losing Ole Miss. I don't think Alabama's losing to Tennessee. It's kind of square. One of our commenters said, Ole Miss kind of feels like a square dog, actually. So they didn't think the idea of a money line parlay here with Alabama and Georgia seemed all that square. But what do you think here? Alabama, it's very similar to Georgia. At home, playing with revenge. They lost to Tennessee. They've got revenge here in Tuscaloosa. They played so many tough games in a row, though, Bama. Can they at least get the straight-up win? Can they cover against the Volunteers down in T-Town?
I think they cover this game, and I think they do. They win this game by 14 points to 17 points, somewhere in that area. Ralph talks about strength of schedule, and Brian, you brought it up, as Alabama seems like they're playing a ranked team every week. And since that opening loss at South Florida, it doesn't look as bad now as it did then. Or Alabama, who's the opening? Florida State, I'm sorry. Since then, they've been vastly improved, and their quarterback play has been outstanding. Tennessee's been a disappointment to me when it comes to defense. They brought a ton of players back from a defense that performed very well last year, guys, but they're not playing like that defense this year. And that shapes up as problematic on the road against an Alabama team that's really firing on all cylinders offensively and defensively as well. Alabama showed their class last week going on the road against Missouri and winning that game 27-24. So this is a team that's battle-tested. And I think this game certainly is not one they're going to take lightly against the opposition they're facing. And like Brian said, with the revenge factor, I like Alabama here. Late 8.5 over Tennessee.
Ralph, Tennessee was a little fortunate, I thought, last week. Only beat Arkansas by 3, and that was with a +3 turnover margin as well. That was, of course, the Hogs' first game under Bobby Petrino, the always non-controversial Bobby Petrino. But what do we think here? You want to make it 3 straight here? 3 for 3, I should say, with Alabama?
Here? Done deal, guys. I'm in the Mark Lawrence Wise Guy contest, and I used Alabama as my single play. You send in a play every week, a double and a single. So on Tuesday, it was one of my top plays. It's still one of my top plays. It's not officially on my card yet, but I have Alabama as my number 2 power-rated team in the country. When you look at the averages, their offense is playing to the number 9 team in the country, averaging more than their opponents allow. Their defense is number 5. When we look at Tennessee is number 20 on offense. And Ross, you are right. They're number 75 on defense. And that means they're giving up. They're giving up almost what opponents average despite being a big favorite in those games. So, Alabama, the number 2 schedule, Tennessee, the 46 schedule. And even though Alabama has played 40 spots better than Tennessee, they are rated higher in yards per game diff. Tennessee with the number 46 schedule is plus 134 yards per game. Alabama with the number 2 schedule is plus 138 yards per game. Basically even, but again, a 44 spot difference in the strength of schedule. And how about this? You want to talk about one defense being fresh and one defense perhaps getting worn out? Tennessee's defense has been on the field for 77.2 plays per game. That is number 135. Only one team has seen their defense play more plays. Alabama's defense has been on the field 54.3 plays per game. That's number 3. So think about that. That is 23 plays per game more. And we're 6 games into the season. The Tennessee defense has played over 100 snaps more than the Crimson Tide.
All right. Sounds like we're all saying roll damn Tide in this one. Jacob Hefner had a question. He has a system play. Jacob says, he says Virginia minus 17.5 is a system play for me. Wazoo has covered the last 2 games they played, both on the road. And now this is a 3rd game in a row for Wazoo. Of course, Wazoo conferenceless still this year. So they kind of take what they can get. Jacob wants to lay the wood with Virginia. I agree with what you're saying, Jacob. Here's my problem. I think Virginia is very overrated. I think they've been I have a good friend, Aaron Kidd, if he's watching, who is a big Virginia fan. It hurts me to say this, but I think Virginia is a tad bit overrated. I don't know. So I'm going to stay away from that game. Obviously, Wazoo left it all on the field, Ross, last week in that near upset of Ole Miss. But so I don't want to back them, but I don't want to lay 17.5 with this Virginia team, which in my opinion has really overachieved in 2025.
Yeah, that might be the case, but if Virginia had any chance of taking this game lightly, it was all diminished after watching the tape of Washington State last week in their near upset of Ole Miss as a 32.5-point dog. You're right, Brian. I think there's a lot better, in my opinion, you're right, Brian. I think there's much better value on the board than to mess with this game. But I do agree with the viewer that if you put that proverbial gun to my head, I would lean toward Virginia here, only because you'd be hard pressed to think that Virginia is not going to be ready to play this week. And coming off that emotional loss last week, that near miss as a huge underdog. Yeah, it could work from a confidence standpoint that Washington State says, well, I could play with anybody, but it also can go the other way, Ralph, where it's an emotional letdown as well. So I'm going to stay away from this contest.
Ralph, did you have anything on that one? If not, we can talk. We've got some other. God, we have a lot of comments coming. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I do. I do like Virginia. I was impressed with their win. Yes, they were outgained by 146 yards last week. They were plus 2 turnovers, and they still win that game 30-27. In their 4 previous games, they rushed for at least 210 yards per game and rushed for about 5.8 yards per carry. Last week, Louisville did slow down their run game, 88 yards, only 2.8 yards per carry. But you look at Washington State, on the season, they're allowing 156 yards per game, but that includes an FCS team, so those numbers are even worse. But it's more the scheduling spot. Washington State hosted San Diego State, they get a win. They go down to Denton, Texas, play at North Texas, come home for the Apple Bowl, travel to Colorado State in altitude, come back home, travel to the Deep South to Mississippi, play well, come back home. Now travel to the East Coast for Virginia. Maybe they stayed there. Some NFL teams don't travel back and forth. I did not read that because this game was not in my mix, but I had a couple check marks next to Virginia in my sheets.
All right, there you go. Adam also wants to know, can anyone talk me off UConn beating BC outright? BC is going in the wrong direction. I will say they're rested. They've played a tougher schedule, but other than that, I don't know. It's tough to back a team out like BC, obviously, that's lost 5 in a row. Jay, let's talk about Friday games. There's a big Friday slate here. Jay Buff, you've waited long enough. Friend of mine, he says no shirt comments this week. You can go back and watch last week's show if you like that. I liked my shirt last week. I don't care what anybody says, but he wants to know, is there any opinion on Utah State tomorrow night? Really like them. Am I crazy? Also says welcome back, Ross. Here's the deal. Utah State last week was the first week they did not cover. They went out to the island of Hawaii and came back with an L. San Jose State, for those that follow the Mountain West, you already know this. San Jose State's has been a very disappointing team. That is who is playing Utah State tomorrow night. So I'm not going to talk you out of Utah State, I guess, but I don't know. Returning to the mainland, as they say, Ross. That can the travel. Maybe a factor, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, this is a game that I'm going to stay away from. And you're right, Brian. San Jose State's been an extreme disappointment after coming off the momentum of the success they had last year. In Utah State, coming off a loss, might be a dangerous team at home in this spot. So why I would hesitate with Utah State is exactly what Brian just said. Coming off a game at Hawaii, coming back to the mainland, and then having one less day of rest than they're used to. So I'm going to stay away. But this is a very difficult game for me to handicap, and I just think there's much better value, even on Friday's card, than this game itself.
A lot of questions coming in about the Mountain West, Ralph, as well. Not just San Jose State, Utah State, but if you look towards Saturday, there's an interesting game with UNLV and Boise State, the undefeated UNLV running Rebels. I believe, Ross, you had a This Line Makes No Sense segment on Wager Talk today, earlier in the week with Andy Lang, because the Rebels unbeaten, but they're double-digit dogs on the blue turf. So I know you've talked about that one. Ross, people can check the video out. Ralph, what do you think? My thoughts on UNLV are well documented. This team is just unbelievable. They are living the charmed life. They were down 14 to Air Force last week. They come back and win. More on Air Force later in this program. And my best bet, by the way, guys, stay tuned for our best bets at the end of the show. So, if you wanted to add anything to that Utah State, San Jose State discussion, Ralph, you could. Other than that, let's go to UNLV Boise.
Ralph, your mic's turned off, buddy. Still nothing. You've never sounded better, to be fair, Ralph.
Yeah, I'm down.
There we go.
I'm down at Daytona Beach, and I have guests staying here, so I keep having to try it. So if you hear noise in the background, blame my friends from Cleveland. That's them. So
always blame people from Cleveland. I'll tell you that.
Uncouth
that's right.
Clevelanders.
Those people that live in Cleveland now are just freaking troublemakers.
Yes.
I think UNLV is a very fake team. Their offense is exciting, but their defense is not going to stop anyone. If you allow 603 yards to Air Force and you win the game, I had Air Force last week plus the 6.5, and all I'm saying is, please don't go to overtime. Please don't go to overtime. Because UNLV couldn't be stopped, and UNLV could not stop anyone. Obviously, you have to look at the over in that kind of case, but I think the Boise team is worthy. I think they are going to shut down the UNLV's offense. And while I said their offense is good, and they scored 30 against UCLA and they scored 31 against Wyoming, both of those games, they were +2 turnovers. They only had 351 yards against UCLA, and they only had 255 yards at Wyoming. So I cannot trust them to go on the road in this situation. I like Boise.
Okay, I would concur. The only way I can play this game is Boise State. UNLV, they cannot keep getting away with it. All right, we have a rundown to get back to, guys. Keep those comments coming in, though. We will try to go speed round, perhaps at the end before our best bets. But talk about games where there's question marks at quarterback, Ross. We talked about the Clemson situation earlier. Texas Tech and Arizona State. Big one in the Big 12. Texas Tech kind of looks to be head and shoulders above the rest of this conference. But Morton, is he 100%? We don't know. And then meanwhile, Arizona State, it looks like they're getting healthier at that position. I threw, again, talk about the moneyline parlay option. I threw Utah, who played Arizona State last week, in a moneyline parlay, and I didn't need to throw up in a moneyline parlay because Utah really laid it to Arizona State. It didn't matter what number you got there. Utah covered all of them, but Leavitt could be back for the Sun Devils. This is a team that obviously was in the college football playoff last year, getting more than a touchdown at home against the team that everyone thinks is going to win the Big 12 this year, Texas Tech at Arizona State. I'm starting to see support for the Sun Devils. And if you look at our odds screen right there in front of you, you can see the support as this number's trickled down to even 7 at some shops. What do you think?
Yeah, if you watch some of my previews before the season started, I absolutely loved Arizona State at the odds they were getting to win the Big 12, and even as a long shot national championship contender with the opportunity to fade if they just even got into the to hedge even if they got into the playoffs. But Sam Levitt goes down, and without Sam Levitt, we saw what happened last week. He's the all-conference quarterback. As a freshman last year, he won the Big 12, and they got to the college football playoff and gave Texas all they can handle. Now, I would want to be certain he's going to be playing. And then also with Morton not finishing the game last week, that's never a good sign when a player never does not finish the game. But you never know. And with the uncertainty at quarterback, and we talked about the Clemson game earlier with Klubnik, I don't mess with games where I don't know the status of not only one quarterback, but both quarterbacks in this situation. This is almost a game you might want to wait till Saturday morning and get some clarification who's playing. But right now, when you look at the line move of Texas Tech opening at 10 down to 7.5 and 7, Brian, that leads me to believe they like the chances of Levitt playing a hell of a lot better than they like the chances of Morton playing.
Yes. Ralph, I won't ask you to play doctor, only odds maker here. What do you think of this line move here with the quarterback uncertainty in Texas Tech, Arizona State?
That mic button will get you, Ralph.
Let's see. Maybe if I can one more time I screw up, then I just get kicked off the show, or I get put in the bad detention corner.
If we've kept Brian this long, you're safe. You're safe, Ralph. So
okay.
The voice of God has appeared on the screen.
Man, those people in Ohio must be hellraisers, Ralph, for you to turn to Brian. Anyway, go ahead.
Brian, I like Arizona State in this situation. And it goes back to the same thing that we talked about Missouri. Texas's numbers are impressive as any we've seen after 7 games. Their yard per game diff is plus 301 yards. That's 300 yards more than their defense, not the offense is averaging. Their yards per play diff, 3.4 yards per play edge. Their points per game diff plus 35.3 points per game. But they've played the number 114 schedule. I will say this. At least they've been tested on the road, handling Utah like they did. To me, that was probably the most impressive game I saw this year was Texas Tech manhandle Utah. So I do give them some credence that they can get there and play well on the road. Then they followed it up with Houston, where they manhandled Houston on the road in back-to-back weeks. But in this situation, I like Arizona State. I like Arizona State's defense. And, if we know Levitt's healthy, and the problem is this. The Morton injury has been factored in yet. So now if he comes back to play, it's going to go back up. So I wouldn't bet it now because there's no advantage to betting it now. If you think you want to bet Texas Tech, I would bet that now. If you think you want Arizona State, I would clearly wait until the QB situation straightens up and then the line stabilizes.
Okay. That is Texas Tech, Arizona State. One more game in the rundown to get to, guys. I know multiple people have asked about Washington and Michigan. We will get to that game, but we're going to talk about USC and Notre Dame first. These are 2 teams, Ross, that I think are both better than their respective rankings. What do you do in a matchup like that when you've got 2 teams that you think are better than their respective ratings?
Well, I could tell you what my initial thought was on the game, and I can't comment on what you just said because it depends on the situation at hand and also the point spread. So having said this, when I looked at this total, guys, when it first came out on Sunday, I said to myself, this looks like a deadlock over to me. Both teams have been terrific offensively, USC especially, and Notre Dame, the improvement of CJ Carr as the season has progressed is eye-opening. All of a sudden, Notre Dame is a dangerous team through the air. We all knew that they could run the ball effectively, but now they could throw the ball just as effectively, which makes them very dangerous offensively. And I think Notre Dame's defense, although they've looked very good over the last 2 weeks, when they step up in class this season, it looks they were a little bit vulnerable. And USC's defense is definitely vulnerable. USC has just been outscoring people. And the reason why I stood away from the over, and I'm very skeptical of using it at this point, is because the weather conditions. The forecast is calling for rain throughout the game. And when I use an over, I like to have ideal situations when it comes to weather,
Yeah.
So, I mean, my initial thought was to go over the total. And if any kind of weather improvement happens between now and Saturday, it still might be the way to go. But in terms of a side here, you know what? This should be a hell of an entertaining game to watch, and I'm going to stay away from the side.
Ralph, we talked about time zones, flying across multiple time zones earlier. USC has struggled doing that in recent years, especially this is obviously not a Big Ten game, but they've had to do it more and more now that they've joined the Big Ten. USC also has a cluster of injuries at the running back position, although that did not matter last week at Michigan. They could have put any one of the three of us in the backfield against Michigan's team last week, and we would have broke one loose, a big run, because they were just running all over that Wolverines defense. So what do you think here? USC cluster of injuries. Ross kind of liked the over a little bit. They struggle in the Central Eastern time zones, though, due to Trojans. And DJ Carr, like Ross hit on, has been playing a lot better.
Yeah, shout out to both quarterbacks. I mean, Carr on the season now, 1,600 yards, a 10.3 YPA, a 13.3 ratio. But Maeva, 72% completion, better to Maeva. 10.8 YPA, better to Maeva. TD to interception ratio, 13-2, better to Maeva. But the defense, a whole different story. Notre Dame has held each of the last three opponents to a season low. Well, USC's season low is 460 yards. So if they hold USC to under 460, they'll have a fourth straight season low. I just, when I broke down the game, I threw this one out pretty early. Yes, an entertaining game. I don't mind watching it, but the line is where it should be. I just think I would, if I had to flip a coin and give you a lean, I would lean USC because the back door is wide open. This offense has averaged 202 yards per game, more than their opponents allow. Notre Dame's allowing 346 yards, so if they get anywhere near that 500 mark, they're going to cover. So lean USC for the back door for me.
All right, USC, their offense, number one in yards per play in the country. All right, best bets coming up. Ross, Ralph, and I will all share a play that we would like to share with you. But before we do that, we are going to just hit Washington, Michigan real quick because we have the commenters are demanding we talk about this. Kind of like, who likes the Huskies getting sticks? And then Sean, similarly, thinks Michigan might not be as good, and it's more the name that's giving them credit. Very interesting. The Wolverines, Ross, dropped all the way out of the top 25 with that aforementioned loss to USC. I did not think they would. USC was my top player. Minus 2.5. That was my 4% best bet. Thanks for everyone who jumped on as part of $5 Tuesday with that. So, yeah, it's a new – we talk about, again, the time zone difference. It's a noon Eastern kick for Washington. People think, okay, advantage Michigan. But I'm with our counters. I don't think Michigan's as good as was originally thought.
Yeah, I think this game has all the makings of a snooze fest myself. I mean, yeah, Michigan gave up a lot of yards and was torched by USC, but Washington does not present the same difficulties offensively that the Michigan defense will have to face, especially at home. And the total right now, I'm seeing 50.5 or 50. Obviously, if you like the under, you go 50.5. I think this is a low-scoring game. I think it's a boring game. I think you'll see a few sustained drives that end up being settled for field goal attempts. So I'd like the under here. I'm going to go Washington and Michigan under the total of 50.5.
Okay, there you go. An under in Washington, Michigan. It is now time. Our coming to a conclusion that we go over our best here, Ralph, Ross, and myself. Ralph, I'll let you go first on this one, and you also get another opportunity to tell the people what you've got going on at your page over at wagertalk.com.
Well, again, the Weekend Warrior, the only way to go. I do have a 5% for Sunday in the NFL. That's $35. So for $14 more, all of my college football and Sunday's NFL. And remember, try the gold sheet. If you've never tried it, it's $9, guys. You will be thankful that you did. The code GS10 will save you $10 off the $19 cost to pay just $9. I am going to go to the Battle of Georgia, guys. And that is the battle that everyone talks about in the Peach State. That would be Georgia State and Georgia Southern. I look at the teams, and statistically, the underdog is the better team. You know, you look at offense and defense. Georgia Southern on offense, 99 compared to the averages. Defense, 131. Georgia State, 92 and 107. So not huge differences, but differences. The problem is the offense. The offense averaging only 17 first downs per game, 90 yards rushing, 3.5 yards per carry. But this is a Georgia Southern Eagles rush defense, allowing 250 yards and 6.0 yards per carry. The two games, Georgia State has topped 100 yards in two games. One was against Mississippi, which was sort of a shock in week one. Their other was the win against Murray State. Yes, it was an FCS foe, but they will get the run game going. I give them a slight edge on defense, even though they gave up 435 yards to App State last week and a lot of yards passing. Georgia Southern does not have that pass attack. They rush the ball 31 times. They run the ball. They pass and run just about even, but both numbers are poor. Passing completion under 59%, 3.9 yards per carry. I have this game closer to a pick. Give me the upset.
Ralph, calling for the upset there. Ross, it is now time to share your best bet and talk about, one more time, remind the folks what you got going on over at wagertalk.com.
Ralph, I love you, man, because everybody in the state of Georgia is talking about Georgia State and Georgia Southern, right? With Georgia hosting number 5 and undefeated Ole Miss this week. So Ralph's got a great way.
That's in that other league. That's
you got a great way of taking a pig and dressing him up in a tuxedo, which you just did. So, and then you went.
Hey, you know what? The tickets cash the same, right?
Yeah, exactly right, man. The money is green, just like it is in the big games. Old Dominion had James Madison. Old Dominion, they gave Indiana all they can handle in a 27-14 loss in their season opener. But if you look at the statistics, they were really dominating that game, and that game wasn't as close as the final score would indicate, but still gave the number 3 Hoosiers all they can handle. However, they're coming off a terrible performance last week, a 48-24 loss at Marshall, who, if you remember, Marshall lost their head coach and 20 players went with him to his new stop. And this is a Marshall team that was a 14.5-point home underdog, and they win 48-24. And really concerning, Old Dominion, 5 turnovers in that game. And I say really concerning because over their last 3 games, the Monarchs have turned the ball over 10 times. And in a virtual even game like this one is, that's something I have to consider. I mean, it's one thing, okay, maybe you got caught looking ahead. It's one thing you were in a flat spot. But when you're making mistakes, as I just alluded to consistently, it becomes concerning to me. On the other hand, James Madison, 4-game win streak. All 4 games they've allowed 14 points or fewer. Excellent defense. They're 5-1 this year. Their only loss, 28-14 at Louisville. In that game, they held what was thought to be a high-powered Louisville offense to just 264 yards. JMU's defense is no joke. They're allowing 13.7 points per game and just under 230 yards per contest. Here you go, Ralph. Get the pen out. This is a betting angle, not a trend, a betting angle, which involves all teams in college football, not just a specific team. college football home teams like James Madison that allowed 17 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, and they're facing an opponent that has a less than 750 win percentage, and they're coming off a loss by 17 points or more, like Old Dominion did. 34-1 straight up, Ralphie. That's 97%, and that's since 2015. Give me JMU minus 110 on the money line. Now you might see a 120 and 125 out there. That's okay. But JMU on the money line at home to turn in a terrific defensive performance against a team that can move the ball in Old Dominion, but a team that's making too many mistakes for me to side with them. So there you have it, guys.
Hey, Brian.
Ross is back, and he likes the Dukes. Yes, Ralph.
Ross is back, but I have to give him some crap. Okay, after he picks on my Georgia versus Georgia game, he goes to the freaking Sun Belt as well. I expected him to have the top 10
everybody in the
matchup.
state of Virginia is talking about this one too. You know?
But granted, yours is a meaningful Sun Belt game, so I mean, it really is. So I just had to give you a little shout out because it's still the Fun Belt, right? So,
yeah.
Brian, you got to have a MAC game, right?
I'll say my game's not exactly the national TV special. We'll get to it in a minute. I do want to just go speed round on some of the comments we didn't get to. Indiana versus Michigan State is a letdown spot for Indiana. Yes, it is, but there's one problem. Michigan State stinks all to high heaven. They are horrible. And there's an injury at quarterback. I can't back them. Tulane over 23.5 team total. They are playing Army. I watched all of the Tulane-East Carolina game last week. Tulane should have scored way more. They had terrible red zone inefficiency. I won't talk you off that. RJ, who wins the Tulsa game? Speaking of Ocho, baby, wants to know about that. Tulsa is facing East Carolina tonight, Thursday. I will tell you this. I think East Carolina is going to win. They're a 3-score favorite. But if you want to know about the point spread, Joe Ranieri on the best betting show ever this morning, which I stand with, he liked Tulsa and the points. And then TJC65 says, row the boat. Since this is not a kayaking podcast, it's college football. I assume you're talking about Minnesota. I do think Minnesota plus the points would be the play there, although Nebraska is going to win that game. Minnesota was one of the most fortunate winners last Saturday when they got the pick 6 against Purdue. All right, for my show best bet, guys, let's close it out. And this is a BP ugly. Let's just look at all the facts and go the other way special. Air Force is hosting Wyoming. Air Force, their offense is incredible. It's one of the best in the country. Their defense is hideous. It is the worst in the country. The total is 58.5 as Air Force is playing Wyoming. So guess what I'm going to tell you to do, everybody? We're going to go under 58.5. We're going to call for that first Air Force under. Why would I do that, Ross? Well, I'm going to tell you why. When Air Force played Wyoming last year, when these teams met last year, the total was 33. Now it's 58.5. I get that it's a different Air Force team, but that's quite a year-to-year difference in total. And guess what? Air Force, for their first under to hit, you got to have the right dance partner. Wyoming has not had a total close north of 50 all year. Last week, they were in a high-scoring game, 35-28 with San Jose State. But guess what? Wyoming got 2 non-offensive touchdowns that game. This is the ultimate hold your nose and go contrarian under. Air Force Wyoming under 58.5 is my best bet here on the Blitz. Dan, let's see those plays right there to remind the people. Ross, he likes the Dukes of James Madison on the money line. Ralph, he was also in the Sun Belt. Georgia State plus 6.5. And then I apparently have lost my mind by taking Wyoming Air Force under 58.5. What a fun watch that'll be with that Air Force defense was so bad last week against UNLV. But they're not playing UNLV this week, Ross. They're playing
Air
Wyoming.
Force quarterback's pretty good, huh, Brian, since they made the change? That kid,
yes.
Take a look at him in this contest. This kid has really made a big difference for the Air Force offense.
Yes.
Yeah, scrambling last week and running, and his receivers are starting to learn that they have to scramble with them, and it really is some synergy on that offense. And just FYI, Air Force last year threw for 1,077 yards on the season. So far, they have 1,286.
We're going a different way.
Last year they completed 45% on the season. This year they're completing 61. So Liam, Zarka is the real deal over there in not college.
Colorado.
Hell is it?
Colorado
Springs. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let me tell you
It's
something.
not the state of Georgia, but it's Colorado, Georgia.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Everybody's talking about this game in Colorado, by the way, Rob.
They are, and Wyoming. I'll tell you what, I've been to Wyoming before. It's a beautiful state. All right. That is it for this edition of the Blitz. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, again, smash that like button. Show your support. We will be back live 1 p.m. Eastern next Thursday, as we are live, of course, each and every Thursday. Ross, it was so great to see you here again. Ralph, as always, great. Guys, until next time, let's cash some tickets.